The Grand Alistair Hotel was Lena Rossi's kingdom, and the concierge desk was her throne. From this polished mahogany command center, she conducted the symphony of chaos that was the lobby of one of Boston's most historic five-star hotels. She thrived on the precision of it all: the perfectly timed airport transfers, the last-minute reservations at sold-out restaurants, the quiet satisfaction of a guest's impossible request made possible. Her world was a meticulously organized itinerary, and she was never ever late. Which is why, on this particular Tuesday morning, she was in a state of controlled panic. A fender bender on the Tobin Bridge had turned her commute into a crawl, and she was now navigating the bustling lobby with a speed that bordered on undignified. Juggling her handbag, a stack of new guest itineraries, and a much-needed travel mug of coffee, she cut a sharp corner around a pillar, her mind already at her desk. That's when her world tilted. A rogue luggage cart, steered by a bellhop in a heated discussion with a guest, screeched directly into her path. Lena sidestepped instinctively, but her sensible heel caught on the edge of the Persian rug. Time seemed to warp and slow. The itineraries flew from her grasp, fluttering down like wounded doves. The coffee mug spun through the air. Lena felt her center of gravity abandon her, her body lurching backward in a graceless arc. She closed her eyes, bracing for the cold, hard reality of the marble floor. It never came. Instead, her fall was stopped by a pair of strong, firm arms that wrapped around her, pulling her securely against a solid masculine chest. The world snapped back to normal speed, but Lena was suspended, held aloft, with the scent of sandalwood and clean linen filling her senses. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of shock and something else entirely. "Careful there," a deep, amused voice murmured near her ear. "The lobby can be a hazardous environment." Lena opened her eyes and found herself looking up into the warmest pair of brown eyes she had ever seen. They were the color of rich honey flecked with gold, and they crinkled at the corners as their owner smiled down at her. He had dark, slightly tousled hair and a jawline that looked like it had been carved from granite. She registered with a detached part of her brain, impossibly handsome. "Thank you," she managed, her professional composure in tatters. "I was distracted." "So I see." He helped her find her footing but didn't immediately let go, his hands lingering at her waist for a fraction of a second too long. "A woman on a mission." "A woman who is now officially late for work," she replied, smoothing down her uniform jacket and trying to ignore the heat rising in her cheeks. "Then I'm delaying you further," he said, his smile widening. He bent down, effortlessly gathering her scattered papers with one hand while a bellhop scrambled to collect her spilled coffee. He handed the stack of itineraries back to her. "Caleb, by the way." "Lena," she replied, taking the papers. "Thank you, Caleb. You saved me from a very embarrassing start to my day." "It was my pleasure," he said, his gaze lingering on her face. "I hope the rest of your day is less eventful." With a final charming nod, he was gone, disappearing into the crowd heading for the elevators. Lena stood for a moment, catching her breath before finally hurrying to her desk. She had expected that to be the end of it. A fleeting, if memorable, encounter. But the next afternoon he appeared at her desk. "Lena," he said, leaning against the polished mahogany with an easy confidence. "I have a problem only you can solve." "I'll do my best, sir," she replied, her professional mask firmly in place. "Caleb," he corrected gently. "I need 2 last-minute tickets to the sold-out symphony tonight. The best seats in the house, of course." It was a classic impossible request. Lena spent the next 20 minutes on the phone calling in favors, working her magic. When she finally secured 2 seats in the orchestra section, she looked up to find him watching her, not with the impatience of a demanding guest, but with an intense, focused curiosity. "You're very good at your job," he said as she printed the confirmation. "Thank you," she said, handing it to him. He took it, but his eyes never left hers. "So, who are you taking?" The question was so unexpected, so far outside the bounds of their professional interaction, that she blinked. "Excuse me." "To the symphony," he clarified, a playful glint in his eye. "You didn't think I was going to go alone, did you?" I assumed you had a companion in mind, sir." "I do now," he said smoothly. "It starts at 8. I'll meet you in the lobby at 7:30. Lena was speechless. It was audacious, inappropriate, and utterly thrilling. "Mr. Caleb," she stammered. I can't. I'm working. He feigned a look of deep disappointment. A tragedy. Well, perhaps another time. He appeared the next day, this time needing an urgent reservation at a restaurant with a 6-month waiting list. The day after that he needed a private tour of the Museum of Fine Arts arranged for the following morning. Each time Lena worked her magic. Each time he would linger, asking about her favorite books, her opinion on a new film, where she would travel if she could go anywhere in the world. He was chipping away at her professional armor, one charming conversation at a time. On Friday he approached the desk with no request at all. You know, he said, leaning forward conspiratorially, I'm beginning to think I've been going about this all wrong. Going about what, sir? Lena asked, though her heart had begun to beat a little faster. All these tasks. The tickets, the reservations. They were all just excuses to talk to you. He straightened up, his expression turning serious. So, I'm going to try a different approach. A real date. Away from this desk. No itineraries, no reservations, unless it's for us. What do you say, Lena? He stood there waiting, his handsome face open and hopeful. It was a direct breach of every hotel policy and every professional boundary she held dear. It was reckless. It was a risk. And Lena Rossi, for the first time in her meticulously organized life, had no idea what the right protocol was. Lena said yes. It was a decision made not by her head, which screamed warnings about hotel policy and professional suicide, but by her heart, which was tired of living by a meticulously planned itinerary. Their date was nothing like she expected. He didn't take her to a dazzling 5-star restaurant. Instead he asked her to choose. She led him to a small family-owned Italian place in the North End, with checkered tablecloths and candles dripping wax into old Chianti bottles. In the cozy, garlic-scented air, away from the polished marble of the Grand Alistair, he wasn't a guest and she wasn't a concierge. They were just Caleb and Lena. The conversation was easy, flowing from one topic to the next without effort. He was funny, self-deprecating, and asked questions as if he were genuinely interested in her answers. He never once mentioned his work or his wealth. For the first time, Lena felt herself truly relaxing, the professional composure she wore like armor melting away. When he walked her to her apartment door, he hesitated for a moment under the soft glow of the porch light before leaning in and kissing her. It was a gentle, questioning kiss that sent a jolt of electricity through her entire body. It was perfect. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. They stole moments whenever they could. A quick coffee before her shift, a shared lunch, late-night walks along the Charles River after she clocked out. Lena was falling fast and hard. Her co-worker, Zoe, was less enchanted. I don't trust him, she said one afternoon, watching Caleb laugh with Lena at the far end of the concierge desk. You don't trust anyone, Lena retorted, a happy flush on her cheeks. He's too smooth, Zoe insisted. And he's too comfortable here. He talks to Mr. Davies, the general manager, like he's an old friend, not the guy in charge. I saw them yesterday. Davies was practically bowing. Lena waved it off, lost in her bubble of newfound happiness. But the seed of doubt had been planted. The next day, Zoe approached Lena's desk, her expression grim. I asked Frank, the senior bellhop, who your mystery man is, Zoe said, her voice low. Frank's been here for 30 years. He knows everyone. And? Lena asked, trying to sound casual. Zoe took a deep breath. His name is Caleb Sterling. His family owns Sterling Hotels. All of them. Including this one. The words hit Lena with the force of a physical blow. Sterling. The name emblazoned on her own employee handbook, on the letterhead she used every day. Caleb wasn't just a guest, he was the heir to the entire empire. The Italian restaurant, the easy conversation, the perfect kiss. It all curdled in her stomach. It wasn't a romance. It was an experiment. A billionaire's brief diversion with the help. The humiliation was a hot, burning thing in her chest. She was still reeling, her face a pale, frozen mask when he appeared at her desk, that same easy smile on his face. Hey, he said softly. I was thinking we could. Good afternoon, Mr. Sterling, Lena interrupted, her voice clipped and formal, devoid of all warmth. His smile faltered. The easy confidence drained from his face, replaced by a look of stunned realization. Lena, you found out. I found out that my entire relationship has been based on a lie, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. She refused to make a scene, but the hurt and anger radiated from her in waves. "It wasn't a lie," he said, stepping closer, his voice urgent. I didn't tell you. It's not the same thing." "Isn't it?" she shot back. "Let me guess. You wanted to see what it was like to be a normal person? Was I your research project? Did you and your friends have a good laugh about the naive concierge who fell for your act?" "No. Of course not." The hurt in his own eyes looked genuine, but Lena couldn't trust it. "Lena, you have to understand. The moment people find out who I am, they change. They want something. Everything becomes a transaction. With you, it was real. I wanted to keep it that way for as long as I could." His explanation, which might have sounded romantic under other circumstances, now just sounded like a convenient excuse. He hadn't been protecting their connection. He had been protecting himself. He had enjoyed the fantasy of being a normal person, all while holding all the power. "The problem, Mr. Sterling," she said, the formal address a deliberate sting, "is that it was only real for one of us. I was sharing my life with you. You were hiding yours from me. Lena, please just let me explain properly. Let's go somewhere and talk." He reached for her hand across the desk. She pulled back as if his touch were fire. "There is nothing more to talk about. Our professional relationship is over, as you are checking out tomorrow. Is there anything else I can assist you with?" The shift was brutal, her words a wall of ice. She turned her attention to the computer screen, her posture rigid, refusing to look at him. She heard him stand there for a long moment, but she didn't move. Finally, with a quiet, defeated sigh, he turned and walked away. Only when he was gone did Lena allow herself to flinch, the professional mask crumbling as a single hot tear traced a path down her cheek. The days that followed were a special kind of hell. Every polished brass fixture in the lobby, every guest who approached her desk, every ring of the telephone was a reminder of Caleb. Lena moved through her shifts like an automaton, her professional smile a brittle facade that barely concealed the ache in her chest. She was heartbroken, but worse, she felt profoundly foolish. She had allowed herself to be swept up in a fairy tale, only to discover she was just a footnote in someone else's much grander story. On Friday, a week after her confrontation with Caleb, a junior concierge approached her desk, his eyes wide. "Lena, there's a call for you. On the general manager's private line." A cold knot of dread formed in Lena's stomach. She walked on trembling legs to the back office and picked up the receiver. "This is Lena Rossi." "Ms. Rossi," a woman's voice, crisp and imperious as chilled champagne, said on the other end. "This is Eleanor Sterling. I believe you know my son. I am in the presidential suite, room 1501. Please come up at once." The line went dead. There was no request, only a command. The matriarch of the Sterling Empire. The Queen Mother herself. Lena's blood ran cold. This was it. The other shoe was about to drop with the force of a guillotine. She took the staff elevator, her reflection in the mirrored walls showing a pale, composed woman who looked nothing like the terrified one she felt inside. She knocked on the door of Suite 1501, and it was opened by a woman in her late 60s, impeccably dressed in a Chanel suit, her silver hair styled in a perfect chignon. Eleanor Sterling's eyes, a shade of icy blue so pale they were almost gray, swept over Lena in a swift, dismissive appraisal. "Come in," she said, gesturing to the opulent living area. The suite was bigger than Lena's entire apartment, with panoramic views of the Boston Common. Lena stood stiffly in the center of the room, refusing to sit. "I will be direct, Ms. Rossi," Eleanor began, her voice calm but laced with steel. "I am aware of the distraction you have provided for my son. And it is over. With all due respect, Mrs. Sterling, my relationship with your son is a private matter," Lena said, her voice surprisingly steady. Eleanor emitted a small, humorless laugh. "My dear, nothing involving my son is a private matter. He has a duty to this family, to this company. He is destined to run a global empire, not to entertain himself with the staff." The words were a direct slap designed to wound, and they did. "I was not an entertainment," Lena replied, her chin held high. "Weren't you?" Eleanor arched a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Caleb has always had a rebellious streak, a penchant for the theatrical. A secret romance with a concierge is precisely his brand of naive drama. But it is a phase and it has run its course. He needs to be focused on his responsibilities, which include a suitable partner who understands his world." Every word was a calculated dismissal of Lena's worth, her life, her feelings. "I understand his world better than you think," Lena said. "I've worked in it for 6 years." "You work in the lobby, my dear," Eleanor corrected, her voice dripping with condescension. "You do not live in the boardroom. You do not navigate the social and financial pressures that come with the Sterling name." She moved closer, her tone dropping to one of feigned concern. "Let me offer you some advice. You are an intelligent young woman. You have a promising career ahead of you. It would be a shame if that career were to suddenly stall." The threat was unmistakable, hanging in the air between them like poison. "Are you threatening my job?" Lena asked, her heart pounding. "Of course not," Eleanor said smoothly. "I am simply pointing out that the hospitality industry is a very small world. A word from me, a quiet recommendation, and doors can open. Or they can close. Permanently. Not just at Sterling hotels but everywhere." Lena stared at the woman, at the cold, absolute power she wielded so effortlessly. This was the world Caleb had hidden from her. A world where people were not people but assets or obstacles. Right now Lena was an obstacle. "He is my son," Eleanor said, her voice softening into a performance of maternal care. "I will do whatever is necessary to protect his future. This infatuation is a liability he cannot afford. And it. For your own sake as much as his." The choice was clear. She could fight, clinging to a man who had already proven himself a coward by hiding her, and in doing so risk losing everything she had worked for. Or she could walk away, preserving her career, her independence, but losing the man she had, against all odds, fallen in love with. "Thank you for your time, Mrs. Sterling," Lena said, her voice a hollow echo in the grand suite. She turned and walked to the door, her back straight, her composure a shield. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. She could feel Eleanor Sterling's icy, triumphant gaze on her all the way down the hall. Lena's world shrank to the dimensions of her concierge desk. She threw herself into her work with a frantic, desperate energy, channeling all her hurt and fear into flawless service. She was polite, efficient, and utterly remote. She avoided the main lobby as much as possible, took her breaks in the staff-only areas, and timed her exits to avoid any chance of running into Caleb. She didn't have to formally end things. She simply ghosted him, erecting a wall of professional silence so complete it was a rejection in itself. Her silence, however, did not go unanswered. Bouquets of her favorite flowers, peonies, arrived at her desk with cards simply signed C. He sent them back. A small, beautifully wrapped box from a high-end chocolatier was delivered. She gave it to the housekeeping staff. Caleb sent texts, long, pleading messages that she read with an aching heart before deleting them without a reply. He called, but she never answered. She was following Eleanor's orders, not out of obedience, but out of a paralyzing fear for her future and a deep-seated belief that Caleb's mother was right. She didn't belong in his world. After 3 days of this suffocating silence, Lena was leaving her shift, her head down as she hurried toward the employee exit, when a hand gently but firmly caught her arm. "Lena, stop," Caleb said, his voice raw. She froze, her back to him. "Please let me go, Mr. Sterling. I'm off the clock." "No," he said, moving to stand in front of her, blocking her path. He looked terrible. His usually impeccable hair was a mess, his eyes were shadowed with exhaustion, and the charming smile was gone, replaced by an expression of raw anguish. "We are not doing this. You are not shutting me out like this." "There's nothing to talk about," she said, refusing to meet his eyes. "Your mother made her position very clear." The words hung in the air and she saw comprehension, followed by a wave of guilt, wash over his face. "She came to you," he whispered. "Of course she did. What did she say?" Lena finally looked at him, all the pain and anger of the past week bubbling to the surface. "She said I was a distraction. A phase. She threatened my career, Caleb. Not just here but everywhere. She made it very clear that I am a liability your family cannot afford." He flinched as if she had slapped him. "I should have known," he said, running a frustrated hand through his hair. "I should have anticipated this. Lena, I am so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this," she said, her voice trembling. "She was right, wasn't she? You were hiding me. You were enjoying our little secret, but you were scared to face your family. You were a coward." The word hit him hard. He didn't deny it. He just stood there, the truth of her accusation reflected in his pained expression. "Yes," he said finally, his voice quiet and hoarse. You're right. I was a coward. I was so terrified of them ruining what we had that I ended up ruining it myself. His honesty disarmed her. The anger began to recede, leaving only a deep, profound sadness in its wake. And now, she asked, her voice barely a whisper. What has changed? What changed is that I just spent the 3 worst days of my life without you, he said, his eyes locking onto hers with a desperate intensity. What changed is that I realized that my inheritance, this company, my family's approval, none of it means anything if I don't have you. I would rather be a bellhop in this hotel with you than a CEO in a boardroom without you. Those are just words, Caleb, she said, though her heart was starting to betray her. Then let me show you, he said. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over a contact. You're right. I was a coward. It's time for me to be brave. Before she could protest, he had dialed and put the phone on speaker. Caleb, Eleanor Sterling's crisp voice echoed in the quiet corner of the lobby. I was hoping you'd come to your senses. I have, Mother, Caleb replied, his voice firm, his eyes never leaving Lena's. I'm calling to make one thing perfectly clear. He took Lena's hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. I am in love with Lena Rossi. She is the most incredible woman I have ever met. And your attempts to intimidate her are over. Caleb, do not be foolish. Eleanor's voice was sharp with warning. You are jeopardizing your entire future. No, Caleb said calmly. I'm choosing my future. And it's with her. If that means I have to walk away from Sterling Hotels, from my inheritance, from all of it, then that's what I'll do. My decision is made. Lena is the woman I choose. And if you cannot accept that, if you ever speak to her that way again, then you and I will have nothing more to discuss. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. Lena stared at Caleb, at the fierce determination in his eyes, at the hand holding hers as if it were a lifeline. He had just detonated his entire life for her. For them. The choice is yours, Mother, Caleb said finally. Then he hung up. The profound silence that followed was broken only by the sound of their breathing. He had done it. He had chosen her, completely and without reservation, in the face of the one person he had been terrified to confront. You didn't have to do that, Lena whispered, tears streaming down her face. They weren't tears of sadness anymore. Yes, I did, he said, gently wiping a tear from her cheek with his thumb. I love you, Lena. And I'm done being a coward. He had called his mother's bluff, and in doing so had proven that his feelings were not a 5-star fantasy. They were real. And he was willing to risk everything for them. The aftermath of Caleb's phone call was a quiet, seismic shift. There were no immediate explosions, no dramatic disinheritance. Instead, there was a profound, waiting silence from the Sterling Empire. But in the world of the Grand Alistair, everything had changed. Their relationship was no longer a secret. Caleb stopped being a guest and started being a constant, open presence in Lena's life. He'd wait for her in the lobby after her shift, not as a suitor trying to be discreet, but as a man waiting for the woman he loved. They held hands as they walked through the corridors, drawing whispers and stares from staff and guests alike. Lena, who had always prized her professional anonymity, found that she didn't care. With Caleb by her side, she felt untouchable. A week later, an invitation arrived. It was a thick, cream-colored card, formally requesting their presence for dinner at the Sterling family's Beacon Hill estate. It was not a summons, it was an olive branch. Are you ready for this? Caleb asked, his hand finding hers as they stood on the grand steps of the imposing brownstone. As long as I'm with you, Lena said, and for the first time she truly believed it. The dinner was a formal, elegant affair, but the tension that had defined her last encounter with Eleanor was gone. In its place was a cautious, respectful curiosity. Eleanor Sterling was still formidable, but she looked at Lena differently now, not as an obstacle but as the woman who held her son's heart. Caleb's father, a quiet, thoughtful man, engaged Lena in a long conversation about her ambitions, her family, and her passion for the hospitality industry. He listened intently, and she saw a flicker of genuine approval in his eyes. After the main course, Eleanor raised her crystal water glass. I owe you an apology, Lena, she said, her voice clear and steady. The entire table fell silent. I misjudged you. I saw you as a threat to my son's future when in fact, you seemed to be an essential part of it. My methods were regrettable. I hope you can forgive me. Lena was stunned. "Thank you, Mrs. Sterling," she murmured. "Eleanor, please," she corrected, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips for the first time. "It seems we are to be family after all." The truce was real. The war was over. 2 weeks later, Lena was in the middle of a typically hectic afternoon shift. The lobby was a whirlwind of arrivals and departures. She was on the phone arranging a dog sitter for a guest's pampered poodle, when she noticed a hush falling over the usually bustling space. Conversations trailed off. People stopped and turned, their phones suddenly raised. She looked up and saw him. Caleb was walking toward her desk from the grand entrance, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. He wasn't alone. Behind him, 2 members of the hotel's string quartet were playing a soft, romantic melody. He was carrying a single, perfect red rose. He stopped directly in front of her desk, his honey-colored eyes sparkling with a love so profound it took her breath away. "Caleb, what are you doing?" she whispered, her face flushing as she realized the entire lobby was watching them. "I'm creating a new itinerary," he said, his voice soft but clear enough for those nearby to hear. "For the rest of our lives." He dropped to one knee. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Lena Rossi," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "From the moment you literally fell into my life right here in this lobby, my world has been turned upside down. You are the kindest, smartest, and strongest person I have ever known. You challenged me, you stood up to my family, and you made me a better man. I hid my world from you because I was a coward, so now I want to give you all of it forever in front of everyone." He opened a small velvet box. Inside, a diamond ring sparkled with a fiery brilliance, catching the light from the grand chandeliers overhead. "You are my home, Lena," he continued. "Will you marry me and make the Grand Alistair our permanent residence?" Tears were streaming down Lena's face, but she was laughing. This grand, public, wonderfully theatrical gesture was so perfectly Caleb. He wasn't just proposing, he was making a statement. He was declaring his love for her in the one place that represented both their worlds, turning a symbol of their conflict into the foundation of their future. "Yes," she whispered, her voice choked with happy tears. "Of course, yes." The lobby erupted in applause as Caleb slid the ring onto her finger. He stood, pulling her into his arms and kissing her deeply, oblivious to the flashing cameras and the cheering crowd. As they kissed, Lena saw Eleanor and her husband standing near the entrance, watching the scene unfold. Eleanor caught her eye, and for the first time her smile was one of pure, unadulterated warmth. Later that evening, after the excitement had died down, they stood in that same spot in the now quiet lobby. "A wedding at the Alistair, then?" Lena asked, admiring the ring on her finger. "Absolutely," Caleb said, wrapping his arms around her. "We can have the ceremony right here. On the spot where you fell for me." "I think you mean where I literally fell," she corrected, laughing. "That too," he conceded, his smile soft and full of love. "Thank you for stumbling, Lena." "Thank you for catching me," she replied, leaning her head against his chest. She had checked into the Grand Alistair that day for a shift, a concierge ready to solve the problems of others. She was leaving as its future matriarch, her own problems solved, her heart full, ready to check in for good.